The migration crisis began here. Lithuanian borders are still not secure.
So we should look from the war perspective because we are at war.
The country squeezed between Russia and Belarus.
The situation in Ukraine shows that everything is possible.
Dictators from the east look at Lithuania as their own.
If we don't react to these smaller threats, we may consider something else.
The country provides shelter to the Belarusian opposition and strongly supports Ukraine.
And sooner or later, as I said, they will knock your doors.
How long will Lithuanians feel safe? We are in the historical center of Vilnius, under the former defensive walls of the city. Built in the 16th century, the fortification in the 17th century protected the city from Moscow or Swedish armies. After Lithuania joined NATO and the European Union, and when Putin came to power in Russia, the situation has changed. Moscow's biggest problem is that there is no land communication through Belarus with the Królewicz Oblast and Russian exclave separated from Belarus by the territory of Lithuania and Poland. Lithuania, like the other Baltic countries, has become a target of very aggressive Russian propaganda attacks. The goal of Putin's and Lukashenko's special service actions, the goal of hybrid warfare on the border with Belarus, and threats from Moscow, especially after Lithuania became a safe place for the Belarusian opposition and supported Ukraine. Lithuania is also an important element of the defense system of NATO's eastern flank. Today, Lithuania is guarded by different fortifications than those there. Let's see how the Lithuanians secure themselves against the Russian threat.
Well, generally talking, it is the same as in Poland and Latvia. We do not have any issues on the border with Kaliningrad in Russia. But of course we have issues with Belarus, to name illegal migrants, which is not as big problem as, for example, for Poland or Latvia. But we have also a new issue. They started sending, smuggling cigarettes using, the air balloons. And I am 100% sure that it is under supervision of regime of Lukashenko, because we are at war, and we should look at it not as a smuggling, but as a testing of our capabilities, and maybe training some ready aggressive personnel which is inside of Lithuania. So we should look from the war perspective, because we are at war. Even we don't think that way. We should change our thinking.
How long the Lithuanian forces could stay to time of NATO support for Lithuania?
Well, there is understanding that Lithuania must be ready to defend alone no less than 2 weeks, so even more. So for that reason, our government changing a little bit their approach. So we started training our prepared reservists. Yes, we started organizing them, which is the good news. So which means that we will increase numbers in our troops in case of war. Plus, I think it's also good news that our decision makers, they switched their thinking a little bit differently. Because, for example, 5-7 years ago, our politicians somehow were thinking that we can plan only inside of Lithuania. The right thinking is we are NATO and we should think regionally, yes. So we should think maneuver not only inside of Lithuania, but also maybe inside Poland, maybe inside Latvia, maybe inside Sweden. So. And even and I am talking not only about the maneuver with the armed forces, yes, but also with the civilian population. That's why we also can, talk that maybe we can also plan evacuations to Poland, and Poland can also evacuate people to Lithuania. So we should think regionally, increase interoperability not only in the military field but also in civilian defense, yes, and that could win for us, space for maneuver, and if we think regionally, we can increase our regional depth, so that will multiply our defense capabilities. So now this thinking finally happened.
We'll now visit a region of Lithuania surrounded on almost all sides by the border with Belarus. This region is a home to a Polish minority. You are the mayor of town surrounded on all sides by Belarus. What is the sense of security like in such a place?
Yes, I am, let's say, the equivalent of a Polish mayor of a municipality, which has 1,600 inhabitants, but 65 villages. There are only 1 or 2 houses in these villages, but people live there, my residents, and you have to have contact with them. And these are the surrounding villages. Today we are in the center of the town, which is the center of the municipality, but around, as I said, 60 villages. Where are these villages? These villages are on the border with Belarus. And really, there are many such challenges for those residents who live there. To this day, Belarus is already separated by barbed wire, and where there is barbed wire, their relatives live.
I tam, gdzie za tym drutem, za tym kolczastym plotem mieszkają ich krewni.
Мы даже не напоминаем сегодня им о том, что Белосток и Белосточчина – это белорусские земли, что Вильна – это тоже белорусский город и земли вокруг. Мы же об этом не говорим.
So it's hard for us to get into this topic today. Of course, we understand it, we know that we live in Lithuania, we are in the European Union. There is another country. However, our relatives live there, our families. It happens that on the Dziewinska side, here in our Dziewinski country, parents live there, children or vice versa. And they have to keep in touch, of course, they keep in touch by phone. Because it is difficult to get there. To get to, let's say, a wedding, they have to go around 150 kilometers around. It's very difficult, and it's very bad for people. But people have already come to terms with it all. There is a war in Ukraine with the Russians. Belarus supports it strongly, and we receive this Belarusian television. People can watch it non-stop. They can hear the president's statements, the statements of the authorities there. Every flight from a plane or something is already full of fear. However, life goes on.
Складывающихся обстоятельств и военно-политической обстановки вокруг нашей страны мною были активизированы настоятельно переговоры с президентом России Путиным по возвращению в Беларусь ядерного оружия.
We are at the closed border between Lithuania and Russia. On the Niemen River, there is a bridge connecting Lithuania and Sovietsk, a Russian city in the Królewec Oblast. A few days ago, the Lithuanians built fortifications, anti-tank barriers and minefields on this border. They want to protect themselves from a potential Russian fast attack. At the border with Belarus, Lithuania faces a different problem: illegal migration and hybrid actions by Lukashenko. Soon we will see how Lithuania protects borders.
We have introduced a number of measures at the border, physical barrier, also technical system. We deployed additional staff at the border, and that led us to control the border better, much better, and also to react to border violation. And the third factor, probably political. It's a political agenda of Lukashenko's regime or Kremlin regime, because we know very well that this hybrid attack was prepared by both regimes, Lukashenko's as well as Kremlin regime. And the situation very much depends on the political agenda of regimes.
قالوا لكم أن الرحلة ستكون سهلة. قالوا لكم ستسافرون إلى مينسك وبعدها ستذهبوا إلى الحدود مع ليتوانيا ثم مباشرة إلى ألمانيا.
Well, the situation in Ukraine shows that everything is possible. So we should not exclude any kind of scenarios, but talking about current security and political situation, I don't think that the Kremlin regime as well as Lukashenko's regime is strong enough to start this kind of conventional conflict with the NATO, because Lithuania, Poland as well as our neighboring EU members are also members of the NATO. But we have to be prepared, and this is also a very important part of our task. In accordance to our national legislation, State Border Guard Service is part of the National Defense Forces. We belong to the Ministry of Interior, but we have certain military tasks, and in case of the conventional crisis or war, we became part of the National Defense Forces. We are being integrated to the Lithuanian army, and we have to carry out specific tasks in accordance to our plans.
In search of an answer to the question whether Lithuania is safe, we ask about this at the Ministry of National Defense.
Well, we look from two angles. First of all, what is most important threat is Russian ability to reconstitute forces and increase its military potential close to our borders. And by Russia, I mean both Russia and Belarus, because Belarus is not an independent actor anymore. You can have different estimates, but I believe everyone understands that if war stops in Ukraine after 3-4 years, we will have more Russian capabilities on our border, and that's huge threat to all our security, is it Baltic states or Poland or any other eastern flank countries. Well, second, Russians and Belarusians always checking us on, say, lower level threats. We had this illegal migration waves, we had cyber incidents, we have drones, strategic infrastructure threats. So they're always checking us. It's not existential, but still it's important, because if you don't react to these smaller threats, they may consider something else. So we must be prepared, but never lose long-term perspective.
Мы знаем истинные цели, знаем, кто стоит за каждой провокацией на государственной границе Беларуси, за каждой террористической угрозой мирному населению. Знаем, потому что работаем на упреждение. Мы как никогда бдительны. Мы выучили все уроки начала Великой Отечественной войны. И у нас только один учитель – наша история. История победителей.
All political parties now agree that we must raise defense financing. Now it's above 3%, but we will keep pushing. Well, Poland shows very good example on how to deal with defense expenditures, and that's what we should look for as good practice, and how you develop your capabilities. And it comes to everything. It comes to increase of manpower, increase of conscription, increase of procurement and readiness. That forces are not just have good new shining equipment, but able to use it, and stocks. I mean, what Ukraine shows and all other conflicts show that in times of crisis you must have lots of ammunition stored on your territory or nearby, that we could use, because the use of ammunition is huge in modern conflict. At the same time, as all countries, we have this total defense concept, meaning that everyone is part of defense. It's not just military, but every citizen must know her or his role in defense. To strengthen the societal resistance, that they understand what to do, how to prepare, how we can help armed forces, just If you doesn't matter who you are, a doctor, you have a role. If you're an engineer, you have a role. If you are a firefighter, you have a role. Everyone has a role in defense.
We just visited the Lithuanian Ministry of National Defense. Now we are going to meet with the leader of Belarusian opposition here in Vilnius, the president of Belarus in exile.
People who are fighting with dictatorship, we understand that we all targets of the regime, dependlessly who you are, leader or activist or human rights defender. Regime wants to ruin our unity. Regime wants us to shut up and not speak aloud about a humanitarian disaster in Belarus, about the threat that Belarusian regime has for our neighbors and for security in the whole region. And of course, we have protocols, how to behave if you think that you might be followed, or some like interested people appear around you. But of course, these physical assassinations they might take place. But I really admire how Polish government and Lithuania, they are trying to take care of all those people who had to flee Belarus because of repressions.
Už oboľším god Polska stała się domem dla mnohich z was. Jako prezydent Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej pragnę przekazać wam jasno, że możecie czuć się w Polsce jak u siebie i że Polska będzie dla was domem tak długo, jak będziecie tego potrzebować.
First about Lukashenko, he's fully on the side of Putin. They are allies. Lukashenko will do everything Putin tells him to do. So just let's imagine the case that this attack might happen. Lukashenko will provide territories, facilities, Belarusian to let Russian army to attack. I don't want even to imagine this situation because I'm absolutely sure that dictators might attack only if they feel weakness. And that's why it's so important for powerful democratic world to be strong. But when, some countries of alliances, start to send signals that, maybe let's make a deal, or negotiate, of course it's perceived as weakness by dictators and it emboldened them. I also want to believe that, if this topic is so sharp for Polish people, that they have to be sure in the alliance they are in. They also have to have feeling that in case something like happens, alliance will protect them. If you betray, stop supporting Ukraine or give some lands of Ukraine to Russia, it will only give time for dictators to strengthen themselves, to make, strong alliances with other dictatorship. And sooner or later, as I said, they will knock your doors.
Но в данный момент тебе придется противостоять Балтийским республикам. И часть Польши ты прихватываешь?
Там небольшую.
Северную часть, да? Северо-восточную.
I'd like to ask about, generally speaking, expansion of Russian Empire.
We think that we are competitors, and when we look at the, at the past, and its Lithuanian situation is very similar to the Polish situation as well, because the perception is that Poland, Lithuania, and Russia are historical competitors. But the question is over what they are competing. Let's say the territories for the struggle over who wins. So happened historically that Poland and Lithuania were lost. We were on the loser's part, and by the end of 18th century. Then we, were under the pressure, basically integrated into the Russian Empire, big chunk of Poland as well. Contemporary with modern independence, many of these, let's say, old competing claims, came to the forefront. And when we look, at the 1920, for example, events in 1920, the miracle at Wisla, so it's what for everything started. It had started once again over the heritage of the Kievan Rus. Okay, so I think Ukrainian issue in all this is very important. If we lay claim that, let's say, territory of contemporary Belarus, Ukraine, has the right not to be dependent on the big brother, meaning Russian Federation nowadays, and we are saying that those two countries have the right to choose. So basically we are, in the competing situation once again with the Russian Federation. I think if we didn't claim, that we have some right technically in terms of democracy and they have the right, if we were claiming that we didn't have any right, probably we would be less interesting for the Russian. Because I think the main discussion as during the First World War, for example, even if you read like Rosa Luxemburg and her The Crisis of German Social Democracy, you realize that, the Russian perception, for example, at the end of First World War, was that they want to become a nation state, but it's incomplete. And to become complete, they need to get whatever is Russian. And Russian is Ukraine, Russian is Belarus. For a long time, big part of, for example, of so-called northeast part of the Russian Empire were considered to be, part of the, in Russian political imagination, was part of the Russian Empire.
How safe do Lithuanians and Lithuanian Poles feel? Aren't you afraid that the war will come to Lithuania someday?
I think, as you mentioned, that you can get used to everything in time. In the first half of the year, there was a wave of fear in Lithuania. Many people started looking for alternative places to live, considering moving to Spain or Italy. This wave lasted for about 6 months. From February to June, there were almost no tourists in Lithuania. But, as I said, you can get used to everything. Lithuania is in a tough strategic position. On one side, we have Kaliningrad, and on the other, Belarus, so we feel somewhat surrounded. It's similar to Latvia, which also borders both Russia and Belarus. The situation is far from ideal, but people adapt. Despite the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the constant threat in the region, people are slowly getting used to it.
Do you believe that this war threat can be averted through cooperation with NATO and EU allies?
Life continues, even though the danger remains. Many believe that we are living in one of the less safe parts of Europe, or even the world. On the other hand, Lithuania, like the other Baltic states and Poland, is a member of NATO. That makes a big difference compared to Ukraine's situation. There's already significant military protection in place. As I mentioned earlier, people are gradually adjusting to everything. However, living under constant tension isn't good for anyone. We are now entering the third year of the war in Ukraine, and slowly, we are growing accustomed to this reality. It's simply not possible to live in constant fear. So life goes on, even though we are always aware of the situation around us.
Over the past 20 years, Lithuania's GDP has grown by nearly 300%. This small country on the eastern peripheries of the European Union is an example of the fantastic success. The Lithuanians have become wealthier. Once Lithuanians used to go to work to UK, Ireland and the Netherlands. Today they are returning to their homeland. Immigrant workers from Uzbekistan, Ukraine and the Middle East are coming to Lithuania. The Lithuanians want to defend their success, their prosperity, but they see dark clouds on the horizon. The dark could come from the nearby Russian exclave of Kaliningrad or from Belarus. Small Lithuania cannot defend itself alone. Lithuania is counting heavily on the allies from NATO, on Poland, but also on the new members, Finland and Sweden. There are thousands of refugees from Ukraine and Belarus here in Lithuania. The Lithuanians for sure do not want to share their fate. They would prefer Putin to stand before the International Criminal Court in The Hague before he commits further war crimes by attacking Lithuania and the Baltic countries.